You know, in most videos, my hair is almost always doing something I don't want it to do, but because there's no like flip out monitor on this camera, I don't know until I'm editing. And then while I'm editing, I like adjust my hair in the way that I wanted it to look in the video, even though I know it's too late. That's a little bit of insider information for you guys. Anyways, today we're gonna be doing a little bit of a SHAZAM review. So this is like my second upload in like 2 days. So if you guys missed my video yesterday, feel free to check it out. If you guys have seen the movie Us, I uploaded on the weekend about that movie. And today we're gonna be talking about SHAZAM, which I had actually originally intended to make a very quick review of on Saturday after seeing it, because they had done a bunch of those pre-showings on Saturday. So I was like, I'm gonna watch it, I'll make a review, get it out right away. But then I decided to double feature SHAZAM with Us, and then Us raised all of the questions I just felt like discussing in a video, and then I didn't want to release 2 movie reviews back to back, and now we're here, and I decided I'll talk about SHAZAM anyways, because it's still not officially out, so a lot of people probably haven't had the chance to see it, so theoretically, this is still an early review. Now, if you guys have been in my stream, if you guys follow me on Twitter, you know that I've been pretty excited for SHAZAM. SHAZAM's the kind of character that just needs to be lighthearted, needs to be fun, needs to have some life and excitement, and I think that's something that DC has needed for a while. And I'm not saying that, like, you know, the darker tone of some of the DC movies aren't warranted. Like Batman, absolutely. I like my dark, brooding Batmans. I like what Nolan did with him. I don't need too many witty quips or anything in Batman, but those are still there for all of you people who try to say that like DC is just so much more different than Marvel. There are still witty quips at the heart of a lot of these movies. It's just the overall tone ends up being a lot darker in most DC movies, obviously, especially as of late. But something like SHAZAM demands levity in the same way that Batman demands brooding or just seriousness. So SHAZAM, for those of you who don't know, is a character that he's literally like a 14, 15-year-old kid, depending on like what you're reading, who gets the power that's basically like Superman. It is actually the power of the gods, but it essentially makes him pretty close to Superman. So you kind of have to treat him similar to a Spider-Man-like character. You kind of have to make him more lighthearted, more quippy, and they did a really good job, other than the fact that the movie ended with like a Ramones song, they did a really good job keeping him his own separate character, whereas in the Justice League movie, The Flash, for some reason, felt like knockoff Peter Parker. They really just let Billy Batson be himself. They didn't try to do too much of anything that Marvel had done with Spider-Man. As you guys know, I'm a huge fan of Homecoming, huge fan of Tom Holland, very excited for Far From Home, but they really did just go with what they had with this character, and they let that shine through. So I, for one, was actually a very big fan of this movie. I don't think it met all of my expectations, but I was extremely excited going into it, and I will say that it is my favorite DC movie. I know a lot of people are probably gonna say they prefer, you know, Wonder Woman or Aquaman. I think Wonder Woman completely falls apart in the 3rd act. I think Aquaman jumps around too much. There were some really good moments in Aquaman, but I don't know if you guys saw my regular review. I just feel like there was issues, and I feel like a lot of those issues get ironed out with SHAZAM. So overall, I would definitely recommend seeing it if you're a fan of the superhero genre, if you kind of want to see something different from DC, and if you're just in the mood for something a little bit more lighthearted, a little bit more fun. It's simple, it's nothing too serious, nothing lending itself to a grander story, which is kind of odd for some of these superhero movies now. Like, we're rounding the corner into Endgame in the Marvel universe, and DC's just desperately trying to put itself back together after the Snyder business. I don't know, does Zack Snyder just not like it when people aren't talking about him and his crap attempt at the DC universe? But he's being real vocal lately, like, just sit down. But anyways, I think they did a really good job with this movie, and like I said, if you're a fan of superhero movies, or if you're a fan of DC, if you're a fan of SHAZAM, I don't think you'll be disappointed. The general consensus of the movie is pretty positive. If you're not a fan of superhero stuff, or if you're just really a fan of the darker stuff, I might give it a skip. It might not be for you, especially if you don't like superhero movies. I definitely would say it's not for you. But if you're just a general fan of this kind of stuff, I think it can't hurt to go see it. I think you'll definitely enjoy it. Not to say that it's perfect. I do have some issues with it, but there was enough really great things that pull it together that make it, you know, I can recommend it. I can recommend it. And I would say, like, a lot of the ensemble cast is great. Like, the foster home that he's with is everybody in that foster home is really great, especially Freddie, the main other guy. They really kind of nailed that character. I feel like a lot of people, kids especially who have different disabilities, tend to protect themselves with sarcasm, with humor, with just that kind of behavior. I think we've all knew people when we were growing up that had, you know, different issues that they tried to mirror with that kind of comedy, with that kind of humor, with that kind of attitude. So I think they did a really good job with those portrayals. I was surprised at how well the kid who actually played, you know, young Billy Batson did. I think everybody thought that Zachary Levi was just gonna kind of run away with the show, which obviously he also did a fantastic job. Like, there's no denying that he did a great job in his role as like the full-size Shazam. But they cast the child actors really well too, which goes a long way, especially because the movie really does end up being kind of like 50%, you know, young Billy Batson, 50% Zachary Levi Shazam. In terms of other stuff, I think that like the villain storyline could have used a little bit of work. It's kind of like a weird thing where a lot of it felt kind of very childish and lighthearted and kind of like PG-13 in nature, but then they do certain things that like really pushed the boundaries of the rating they had. Like, there was a kid sitting in front of me that like for like a solid like 10 minutes was like hiding in her mom's like sweater. And she looked to be about 12, so she wasn't on the young end of the scale, and she was genuinely terrified. And I was kind of looking around, and there was a few other kids that were like genuinely terrified in certain moments, and I think that's gonna hurt it in the long run. Like, when you have something that's so lighthearted and so just fun in nature, having moments that are genuinely terrifying children, I think that is kind of like, that's a little bit of a problem. I'm actually surprised that some of the stuff that happened made it through like the screeners and just kind of made it through just, I don't know, general sensibility. But that's not to say that it's bad. It was just odd to me. Basically just because I feel like the character motivation for like the villain and stuff also seems a little bit more on like, I don't know, the childish side and execution. And then you just kind of have these like really dark, serious moments that just kind of like, it was totally confusing to me, but movie was still fantastic. That's really my only issue there. Now let's talk about some spoilers where I kind of explain a little bit why I feel that way. So if you have not seen Shazam, now is the time to click off. If you have seen Shazam or you don't care about spoilers, we're gonna get into that right now. So again, guys, spoiler time. All right, so what I kind of mean about the villain is that the way that Mark Strong acts, and I'm a big fan of Mark Strong, so I was surprised when walking out where I felt like he was actually the weakest link in the movie. I felt like the way that he was portraying the character was a little bit too like juvenile, and like for him being like an adult character. And I understand the motivation, and I'm not saying the motivation as to why he became bad was a bad motivation. I'm just saying that the way they, you know, exhibited it on screen with him and his acting came across as childish. But then you have like these sins literally biting someone's head in half. Like that scene where the woman, like I think it's a woman, gets like eaten from the head. Like it literally bites the top of his or her, I can't even remember anymore, the employee's head. Like, that's kind of terrifying, a little bit dark for a movie that you're trying to market at kids for the most part. I would assume you're trying to make it family friendly for everyone. That was like a little bit dark for having somebody just kind of walking in being like, you know, father, yeah, you're gonna regret ever talking down to me. You know, just very, very childish and kind of like petulant in behavior. And then it's yeah, somebody gets their head eaten clean in half. It was. And then it does the classic, like you have the kind of like the tinted windows, so you can't see in fully, and it's like the smoky tint, but if someone's against the glass, you can kind of see their outlines. So these things are like, these people are running towards it, getting lashed back and forth and everything. I'm like, that is kind of terrifying. This is like a missed moment. There's kids that are terrified right now, but this guy is like just acting really, really like childlike in his execution. So that was kind of my main issue with him as a villain. Maybe I'm in the minority here. You guys let me know. That was the only thing that really kind of stood out as unusual to me. I felt like there was a weird tonal shift there with where like the entire movie feels like very family friendly, very safe. And then you just have that moment, those moments of extreme violence. And I just really wasn't a fan of the way Mark Strong portrayed the character he was supposed to be portraying. And basic nitpick, the CG for the sins could have been a hell of a lot better, but I'm not gonna hold a studio that couldn't even get Justice League right with the CG accountable for something like Shazam. If they can't put their priorities in their literal massive franchise title, I'm not gonna hold them accountable for something called Shazam. You know, I should hold them accountable, but I'm not saying that CG has to be perfect. I'm just saying I think there might have been a better way to execute them on screen, even keeping them as like smoky wisps where like just certain figures of the faces came out, or certain like claws and stuff. Might have been a little bit better, might have been a little bit more sinister, but that is just like an aesthetic nitpick. It doesn't really detract from the movie. I absolutely love that Adam Brody is the grown-up version of Freddy because it was so perfect. I have a secret, not so secret love of the OC. I'm a big fan of him. I always really have been. So just seeing him as the grown-up version, and it fit. It still is exactly like the Seth Cohen character, but it worked perfectly, even like aesthetically with the way his hair is. It was really great when he kind of becomes like the Shazam version himself. I'm usually not a fan of like family team-ups like that. Like I know in like Big Hero 6, that's when I kind of checked out. I wasn't really a fan of like the group ensemble. But in this it worked. I felt like they did a good job establishing the family vibe ahead of time. So I think it actually worked quite well, even if just to see the grown-up Freddy or the Shazammed Freddy. I was a big fan of that. I think this is definitely, other than some of those weird moments where it got ultra violent, I think this is definitely a great movie to enjoy with the family. And it's kind of hard for me to have to be like, other than this moment where somebody gets their head cut in half or bit in half and people are terrorized. It's really good. It was very funny. It was pretty much exactly what I wanted it to be from like the comedic standpoint. I love the way the characters were portrayed, just kind of having like a ton of fun. Like it was a pretty realistic representation of people who grew up in a world where superheroes do exist, where people like Batman and Superman exist, and you have your friend who's kind of like obsessed with that whole culture, and then you just kind of like getting the powers, and the two of you just kind of messing around. Like you can all be great and fine and dandy and think that you're immediately gonna be like the super chivalrous person doing the best to save the day. In reality, a 15-year-old's definitely gonna start just having fun with it the way that they do in this movie, and I think they handled it really well. So those are basically my thoughts on Shazam. Let me know what you guys are thinking in the comment section down below. Did you see it? Are you gonna see it? What have you? So I would recommend it. I would recommend it. It was a good time. It was a good time. It could have been better, but it was a great time. Thank you all so much for watching. Have a fantastic day, and we'll catch you all later. I already snapped. We'll do it again.